Live with Paul Hytinen.
Yeah, good morning, Todd. Hey, it's a pleasure to be here at base camp.
It's a pleasure to have you, Paul.
Thank you.
Let's jump in. The first thing I want to do is have you tell people who you are. Let's get your background, what you've done, your professional background, kind of paint a picture of, we're going to go kind of in chunks here.
Yeah.
What have you done in your life? What's your background?
Born and raised in Ishpeming. Right after high school, stepped into a mining job. I was a career miner for 37 years. And during that, I worked 3 years underground, 3,000 feet underground, 1.5 miles in from shaft, blasting ore and extracting it with the electric motors. After that, that mine shut down in 79, and I went out to what we call the open pits, Tilden Empire, made a career out there, and mainly in maintenance. I was a welder, I was a plant repairman, shovel mechanic. I was in instrumentation or non-destructive testing, and I retired as an electrician.
Did you say 37 years?
37 years, 7 weeks and 4 days.
3 years underground?
3 years underground.
So are you saying for 3 years, every day underground?
Every day underground.
What's that like?
Dark, wet. As just the nature of the ore body we were mining in, there was a lot of water. So if you were working down on the level where the trains went, you were in ankle deep water dripping on you.
All day?
All day.
So you were down there underground for 3 years. Would there have been, I'm assuming there were other people who were underground all the time?
Yeah, there were miners that made 40-year careers working underground.
Underground?
Yep.
God, that's got to be wild.
Yeah, how'd you say? I had a guardian angel down there.
Yeah?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
There was a few times I probably shouldn't have seen daylight again. I had a boss almost kill me. Almost buried me alive, and I almost got run over by a train once due to a miscommunication. So
Underground. Can you paint a picture? Like, somebody listening to this, I don't know that, I have no concept of, like, how big's the space?
In this case, we were soft ore mining, meaning that you needed support legs on each side and a support cap across the top about every 8 feet.
Okay.
And then you would put wood timbers in between there to keep the peripheral rock from dribbling down. Mm-hmm. But also that support steel that held, basically, it held the ceiling up.
So what's the height?
The height on the main levels, you were 10 feet high, 10 feet wide.
10 by 10.
Yep.
And how are they lighting that space?
100-watt incandescent lamp, probably about every 200 feet.
Every 200 feet.
Yeah.
That seems dark.
And then you had a miner's lamp on your head.
Right.
And then where the areas where the men actually worked, where the actual ore extraction was, they were like 8 feet wide, 8 feet high.
And you're in ankle deep water.
Yeah. Mud. Every day.
Every day.
Yep.
Do you, they're eating lunch down there? Like they're not coming out at all?
Oh, what you do for lunchroom is you just take and you just shut your machine off. You move over 3 feet onto a dry bench because you bring a piece of plastic and you put the plastic over the bench to keep the bench dry. Mm-hmm. You take the plastic off, you sit down, and you eat your lunch. I mean, there's no wash up, there's no air conditioning. Mm-hmm. And because there's a lot of wood timbers down there, you get a lot of insects.
Sure. And
you get these, what we call them, silverbacks. They were like little millipedes. They had like 50 legs on each side.
Would that be like a silverfish?
A silverfish, yeah. There you go. Yeah. Silverfish. And anyways, we would be eating your lunch, and occasionally they would drop down on your sandwich or jump in your cup of coffee for you. And so it was...
How far in were you? So
mile and a half.
Mile and a half. So you're walking in a mile and a half?
Yes.
And then you're walking out?
Walking out. That's if you were like what we call a scraperman.
Day starts at what time?
7:30.
Day ends at what time?
7:30. I mean, it's 3:30. We worked 8-hour shifts.
Okay.
But we also work shift work. So you were day shift one week, midnights the next, and afternoons the following. You went in a rotating 3-week schedule, Monday through Saturday.
When you weren't underground, I think you said you were sort of a career electrician?
I retired as an electrician from Empire, yeah.
Okay. And, I mean, what does that day look like? Just running around fixing stuff?
Troubleshooting, yeah. High voltage, 13,800 volts, any 12 volts DC to 13.8. That's what we had. That was our voltage that we worked with.
There was a story that you told me, I think, when we were running around grooming for Polar Roll, about a situation. There were some high winds.
Oh.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
You guys were fixing something broke.
Yes.
What was that story? Can you call back to that?
It was January 30th, 2008. There was just a bunch of us. We had like an open work schedule. We could come in at 4:30, 5:30, or 6:30 in the morning. There were 4 of us. We showed up at 4:30 a.m. The plant was down because of a 13.8 line was damaged. It was 0 degrees, 50-mile-an-hour wind, and the anomaly was 50 feet up on a pole.
Describe the anomaly.
The anomaly was it was a open circuit to one of the connections up on where it goes from the overhead line to an underground line. There was like a clamp, electrical clamp. Well, that had gotten dirty and it opened. It just burnt and it opened up. So we had to go up and strip the wire back and reconnect it. But our bucket truck was only rated for 25-mile-an-hour sustained winds.
Who's going up in that?
Me and my partner.
How'd that go?
Well, because it was too windy for the truck to go up there by itself, we had to leapfrog ourselves. We'd bring the bucket up 3-4 feet, push it against the pole. We would just inch our way up. And it was 50 below zero with the wind chill factor. And it took us 4 hours to fix it.
How did you end up on the mining path? Was this a family thing?
I was a third-generation miner.
Third generation.
I followed my father's footsteps to the mine.
Would you say that was a common path, that it became a family path back at that time?
Yes.
Generations of miners?
Generations of miners. You had uncles, cousins. You know, there's like my dad, my uncle, 2 cousins, 2 grandfathers, myself. You know, all of us were miners.
So you were born what year?
1955.
So 1955. So you've lived to see mining evolve and the UP evolve?
Yes. I went from when I worked underground at the Mather B, which is currently the Nagani High School. The machinery I was operating then was patented in 1917. And when I left the mine in 2011, we were state-of-the-art computer-controlled electric loading shovels and 320-ton trucks.
And that was what year?
That was in 2011. So basically, I went from pick and shovel days to the state-of-the-art equipment for 2011.
What was that like? Just being part of that evolution, seeing where it started and where it was when you left.
It was, in a word, it was amazing. You know, to see what do you say, smart people, engineers can do. You know, they can see a problem, fix it, and build off of, like the old saying, build a better mousetrap.
So during that time, from where you went from pickaxe and shovel to state of the art, did mining become easier? Yes.
It went from underground. A lot of times you move dirt by hand for whatever reason. You clean something up, you had to move it to the open pits. Everything is automated machinery. Nobody touches the product.
So very hands-on.
Very hands-on.
To no touch.
Correct.
So now I'm curious. We never know where these talks are going to go. Mm-hmm. But you and I have talked about resilience and doing hard stuff before.
Yep.
So I am curious. I'm asking, this is probably going to be an opinion, but how did the culture of mining or the culture of how did the people who do the mining change as the processes changed and became easier? Was there a change? Maybe there wasn't a change. I'm picturing hard ass, tough miners who are in ankle deep water with lights every 200 feet in this super confined, tight space, right?
Yep.
Back in the day where you started. I'm picturing this.
Yep.
Eating, a dude sitting on a plastic tarp on a rock or a bench with insects falling from the timbers on his sandwich.
Yeah.
Right? That's a different human in my mind than the human, I don't know, whatever, 40 years later, who never has to touch the ore.
Yeah. Working underground and even in the open pits, because you have a task to do, and sometimes you don't have the proper tool, you shoot from the hip and you improvise.
You adapt.
Yep.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, like when I was a shovel mechanic working on the large shovels in the open pit, we'd get a trouble call. I did, 15 years of troubleshooting out on them. Your swing shift, day, afternoon, nights.
Yeah.
And sometimes in order to get a part or to get a tool, you'd have to drive 20 minutes one way just due to the expanse of the mining operation. Mm-hmm. So instead of spending 40 minutes windshield time, me and my partner, we would think, okay, what do we got in the truck? What can we do? How do we make this work? And 95% of the time, with ingenuity and a little bit of luck, we'd make it work without spending a lot of windshield time.
Did you ever think about changing jobs?
Changing jobs
did you ever think of not being a miner? Did you ever get into it and you're like, this shit's hard?
No. It was, growing up as a kid in Ishpeming, we had a lot of woods.
Yep.
And we spent a lot of time in the woods, building shacks, snow caving, blah, blah, blah. So it was part of my childhood culture.
A way of life.
A way of life, yes. And
that makes a lot of sense.
And that was pre-internet. When I grew up, we had black and white TV, one station, a party phone line where we shared it with like 6 neighbors. So
can you imagine kids today?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So anyways, I guess it was part of my childhood culture that hey, you lived outside, you do hard stuff.
What's the state of mining today? So you talked about state of the art in 2011. I mean, I know you're out of the game, but
yeah.
Do you have any perspective on the mining that's done today? Do you know people that are doing it?
Oh, I keep in touch. I got a network of current miners, and we get together every couple months for coffee and breakfast and a little bit of BS. And as you say, technology is improving. Every year there's somebody comes up with an idea to cut 2 cents a ton off. Whether it be in drilling, blasting, loading, haulage, or inside the plant with the grinding process, and also the aids of computers.
Do you think that with all of these improvements that we make, efficiency improvements, process improvements, taking the shovel or the pick out of the miner's hand, making it easier, do you think there's a cost to that? That a cost that doesn't show up on a balance sheet?
Cost that doesn't. No, I guess I'm not seeing that. No, I see it. Oh,
well, here's where I'm going with it.
Yeah.
The cost is, if you were to take a 10-year or a 15-year miner right now, who has come up through the ranks in today's mining world with today's processes, super streamlined, super efficient, not touching a lot of stuff, not physically doing a lot of it. And you stick him back in the tunnel, eating a sandwich on the bench in ankle deep water.
Yeah.
The cost is, I don't think that son of a bitch does the job.
No, I think you would if he was to go underground, he would go in the cage. That's the elevator on surface. Mm-hmm. It takes you down 3,000 feet at 20 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. When it stops, that cage bounces, not like the elevators in the hospital. They are just... Okay, this cage bounces 5-6 feet when they stop it. Okay?
5 or 6 feet?
Yeah, 5 or 6 feet. Oh, yeah. Yeah, so sometimes we bounce 20 feet in that thing.
Holy shit.
Because the hoist operator fell asleep, and I got to stop these guys. And boing, 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 boing. Well, anyways, okay, that guy would open up the cage door, and he would look out in that tunnel. Nah, I'm not going here.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. That's the cost.
That's the cost.
That's the unreported cost. Mm-hmm. And then, I've talked about this recently with Mark or in a couple other conversations that employers today are fit to be tied, that they've got lazy people and people who can't do hard shit. Mm-hmm. And yet they don't look in the mirror and consider that they're part of that problem. Like they're literally creating products that are supposed to make life easier for everybody. Yep. Solve somebody's... businesses are solving problems for people because they can't solve them for themselves. Mm-hmm. All the processes at work, everybody is fixated on process improvement because it'll save 2 cents, as you noted.
Yeah.
But the cost is you end up with a workforce and a society that the first hint is something hard, it's an oh shit moment because they can't do it. They're not accustomed to doing it.
Yeah. Well, it's... Yeah, that's it. That's our culture. Like we talked earlier, previous conversation, we have the ability to remove hard shit out of our life.
Yeah. I was in Lansing Monday and Tuesday, and I bumped in, there's a big social event, and I bumped into somebody who's done the crusher. And we got into this conversation with a guy who has not done crusher, but has heard about crusher, and we're talking about what the experience is like. And you can see this guy who hasn't done it as we're sharing stories about like what he's gone through, what I've gone through when we've done the event, and kind of describing it to this guy. And his eyes are getting bigger and bigger and bigger because he hasn't done an event like this. Mm-hmm. So he had a lot of questions, but where this all ended up, where I'm going with it is, we were talking about why do some people do the crusher? Why do some people not do the crusher? And you can have these deep philosophical conversations, but really what it comes down to, the simple answer is you don't have to do hard shit like that anymore.
Yeah.
You can just make the decision not to.
That's right.
And that's the world we live in.
Yep. Like with YouTube and the internet, you can take virtual tours of most any event on Earth.
Yeah.
And, I wanted to do something. I'll watch it on YouTube. Few episodes, few presenters, and then you shut it off. You say, okay, I did that event. Let's move on to another one without physically doing it.
Yeah. So, all right. Career miner, family history and heritage and mining. That kind of talks about, who you are, a little bit about you professionally, where you've been, grew up in Ishpeming.
Yep.
Brothers, sisters?
One older sister, and I had an older brother who got killed in a hunting accident 59 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
We've never talked about that.
No, it's
Did not know that.
Yeah, short story is it was March 12th, 1966. He was hunting by himself. He was crow hunting over a beaver carcass on the edge of a field. Mm. Another kid around his age, around 14, was hunting by himself. Mm-hmm. He come up behind my brother. He heard my brother was blowing a crow call. He seen my brother's head move.
Yep.
Okay, he didn't identify his target.
Oh, geez.
And pulled the trigger, and
wow,
that was it.
Young kid.
Yeah, 14 years old.
Jeez, oh man.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Okay, so that's my brother. I have an older sister who's 6 years older than me.
Where's she at?
She's living in Ishpeming in our family house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Okay.
All right. So beyond mining, who is Paul Hytinen?
Who is Paul Hytinen?
I got a True Divide book here that you brought in. So apparently you must cycle because your name's on that thing.
Yes, it is. Well, okay, short story about my cycling. I was 51 years old. I was out of shape. My two adult daughters noticed that I was really getting short of breath compared to when I was 30.
Were you expanding?
Yeah. Round is a shape, no doubt. Okay. But it was big round. Okay. So they seen I was getting out of shape, so they bought me a mountain bike, entry-level mountain bike, for my graduation present when I graduated from NMU in 2007.
Your kids bought you this bike?
Yeah, my kids bought me this bike. And my first ride on my bike, I bumped into a neighbor who just moved into the area. And he was a mountain biker, so he brought me into mountain biking. We started biking the summer of 2007. And I did the Ore Shore Hard Rock 7, 8, 9 in 2013. Mm-hmm. And then I just casually biked. And it was spring of 2016. I seen Danny Hill was a guest speaker for Dylan Gonda, who was a local cyclist, NMU student. And Dylan was doing a GoFundMe fundraiser to help sponsor his 2016 Tour Divide ride.
I remember when he did that.
Yeah. So when I seen that, I went to the presentation, and I fell in love with the Tour Divide.
Mm-hmm. What was it about the Divide? What did you fall in love with?
The remoteness, being by yourself, and the beautiful snow-covered mountains.
Do you think the being alone, that sense of isolation, do you think that your experience or career as a miner helped with that?
Yes.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So had you heard of the Divide before?
I had heard about it in 2011 when Danny Hill did it.
Okay.
And I thought, who in the heck wants to go out on a bicycle, ride that far, eat donuts every day? Because, your trail food is minimal. Your resupply points are almost daily.
Yep.
And I thought, who would ever do it? But in 2016, I was 60 years old, and I was looking for a challenge.
So 2011, you're thinking, who the hell's going to do that?
Yeah. 2016,
you're like, I'm in.
I was going to do the Appalachia Trail, backpack it, to be a thru hiker.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking, that's not happening fast enough. I want motion. So, and I seen Dylan and Danny's presentation. I fell in love. And my wife and I, we left the Ore Docks Brewery. That's where it was. And we got in our car. And I asked my wife, I said, do you think I can do it? She said, yeah. She said, you got that Finnish sisu in you. She said, you can do it. So,
what month was this?
It was end of April. It was like 5 weeks before the Tour Divide.
So you ran out and did it that year?
I did it that year. I had 5 weeks of preparation. Now, may I say this? I never bike packed in my life until the 5th day of the Tour Divide. People want to go out and say, I got to practice. I got to do this bike packing stuff. I didn't.
Yeah.
I bought all the gear, threw it in. First night on the TD, we moteled it. Second night, I stayed in a trapper's cabin. Third night was a motel. Fourth night was a motel. Finally, fifth night, we're up on the mountains of Montana, south of Whitefish. And that was actually my first night bike packing, 5th day at a TD.
What mountains? What range? Over by Whitefish? Do you remember?
South and east of Columbia Falls.
Okay. That's an awesome area.
Yeah.
Stacey and I actually got married out there near Whitefish and the glacier.
Yeah.
Amazing. So first experience bike packing is 5 days into the Tour Divide.
Yeah. And I just note Tour Divide was, my first long distance endurance race. I had never done more than a century race prior to that.
Well, what was the previous century?
The previous century would have been the Sturgeon 100. Okay. That's that unofficial race in Kenton.
Yeah. That was great.
Yeah.
Lots of great roads out there.
Yeah, so the Tour Divide was my longest race. The first day was my longest I ever rode on a bike in a day, 113 miles.
Yeah.
And the last day was the longest I ever rode on a bike, 180 miles.
All right, so let's pause for a second here. Let's make sure that we paint this picture for everybody. So you're 60?
Yeah.
You're 60 years old. This is 2016.
Mm-hmm.
You decide to do the Tour Divide.
Yep.
How many miles is the Tour Divide?
2012 that year.
Okay, 2012 miles. You decide to do it, and you have 5 weeks to get ready.
Yes.
Okay. So you get ready, and then you go and you do it.
Yep.
Well, you go to do it. You get dropped off? Did you fly out there? You flew.
I flew from Marquette to Banff or Calgary. Took the shuttle to Banff.
Yep.
And then the airlines lost my bike.
Good.
And the bike was delivered to me 2.5 hours before the race on that Friday morning. I had 2.5 hours to build a bike, have some breakfast, stop at McDonald's, pick up a couple of burritos to go, and get to the grand departure with 20 minutes to spare.
So this just keeps getting better. So bike disappears, shows up. You got a couple hours to put her together, get your shit together. You managed to do that.
Yep.
And then what was your plan for that first day? Did you have a plan? How many miles you planned on going?
I wanted to make it that 113 miles to Elkford. That was my plan.
Okay.
But 3 hours into the race, grand departure, 8 a.m., 55 degrees overcast. That was the prediction. Beautiful biking weather.
Yeah.
3 hours later, rain. Half hour after that, 2 inches of snow on the ground. And I think, okay, now what do you do? I just keep on pressing forward. And I made it to Elkford that night at 9:30.
Okay, so you made it.
I made it, yep.
How many days did it end up taking you to finish?
32 days, 20 hours, and 36 minutes.
Okay. So that's crazy to me because you look at, and this is not taking anything away from any, but this is going back to sort of how socially we adjust and normalize as time goes on and we make things easier. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking, like, here you are, this is 2016, so 9 years ago.
Yep.
Yeah, actually just about 9 years ago.
Yeah, it'll be nine years ago this June.
Yeah. So 9 years ago, you're going into this 60 years old. You started cycling. How long have you been cycling?
9 years.
Okay, you're cycling 9 years. Now you're 60. You find out about this, 2,000-mile ride 5 weeks before it starts. You get ready. You're all in. You do it. And then you get it done. And you fast forward, and I just think of people who now, they'll train all year for a 30-mile race. Mm-hmm. All year.
Yeah.
It will consume them. They'll train all year for a 100-mile race. They'll train all year for a 200-mile race. That just blows me away. It really, it's more about just where you're at, where your head's at.
Well,
I think is possible.
But what I tell people about the Tour Divide, it's an 80% mental game.
Sure.
It's 15% physical, and it's 5% luck.
Yeah.
Or a good guardian angel.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
And to do it, and put things into perspective, Tour Divide is like doing 22.5 EX 100s.
Yeah.
With the distance
day after day
equal the vertical. Yeah, you climb Mount Everest from sea level to summit almost 7 times with all the vertical.
So you finish it, you complete it. What was that like? What sort of impact did it have on you?
It made me tougher. It made me more independent. And it really helped hone my skills for what I've been contributing to the adventure team here.
Did you sense or feel any change in the connection you had? I don't know how to say it other than just to say, to me, there's two worlds that we live in. There's the natural world, the real world. Mm-hmm. And then there's this constructed world that we create, right?
Yep.
That we spend most of our time in. Did you feel like it affected your connection or your awareness or your ability to be in harmony with the real world? Because you're immersed in it for over a month.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Any change there? Like, just curious.
You got a lot of respect for nature.
Yeah.
And you just learn to adapt. Sometimes shoot from the hip. And also in planning for your, like in that event, planning for your next resupply, hoping that the store is open.
Yeah. Does it help does it help change your perspective of the scope of yourself in the grand scheme of things. You know, when you're going through the tour, like you're going through mountain ranges, this vast landscape of the West. When we did our ride around the UP, it's not nearly the same scale.
Yeah.
But just, I can tell you personally for myself, having spent 16, 17 days out there, it changed my sense of, I'll just say, humility and sort of where I fall into the ecosystem of the world. So I got to imagine when you do the tour, it's just like that on steroids.
Yeah, it changes you. You got a lot of time to think out there.
Yeah.
You got a lot of time for self-examination. You got a lot of time for thinking about family, relationships, and
did you come back with any epiphanies? Was there anything?
I solved a few decades-old family relationship problems.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Interesting. From having that time to think through?
Yeah. Yeah, there were no distractions but the trail in front of you.
Yeah, I was just going to say the only thing you have to think about is what's in front of you.
Yeah.
Which is not common. Mm-hmm. You know, there's so many distractions.
Yeah.
In the day-to-day life that we live in right now.
And on the Tour Divide, I'm on Verizon cell service, and you got maybe 15% cell service. So unless you're in a restaurant on Wi-Fi, you are disconnected from the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So you come back from the tour, and then what? Was there a letdown?
No.
Okay.
No,
I think that's a question some people would have, because people talk about after a big thing like that, like they come back and there's like this mourning, the loss of the event.
No, the hardest thing for me and for a lot of people who do the TD is that it takes you about 3 weeks to stop eating.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because that's all you're doing is, eating. You're eating up 5,000-6,000 calories a day.
Yeah. So you come back and then what?
And then what? I applied for the Arrowhead 135. Mm-hmm. And I convinced the race director, Ken Kruger, through emails, phone conversations, that I won't hurt myself, and he allowed me to do it unsupported.
How'd that compare to the tour?
It was a lot easier because it was like 2-day event.
Right.
You had a beginning, you had an end, and only 135 miles, so it wasn't that long. And I was, I did my planning. I packed all my water, I had all my food. So basically, that's all I had to do is show up and ride.
So you did it unsupported?
Yes.
Have you done it again since then?
No.
Any plans to do it again?
We'll see. We'll see. God will put me there. So.
Right. Okay. Arrowhead 135.
Yep.
Was it difficult to prep for, or did you feel like the tour really? It's obviously a little bit different with the required gear you have to take. You're not carrying a negative 40-degree bag on the tour.
Yeah. The Tour Divide helped make me tougher for that.
Yeah.
And also, being a kid growing up in Ishpeming, playing outside, I was accustomed to the winter, but I'll say the Arrowhead is a temperature-dependent event.
Yeah.
If it's above minus 20, you'll be okay. Yeah. If it's below minus 20, be careful.
Yeah. Well, we saw that this year with Polaroll.
Yeah.
With the Ultra finally having what I would call legitimate ultra weather.
Mm-hmm.
I believe it was below negative 20 that first night out toward the Wolf Lake.
It was 20 below zero. Or actually it was minus 12. It was minus 20 with the wind chill.
Yep.
So it was nippy out there.
Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting to see because we've had a really high success rate the first 2-3 years. Mm-hmm. It was interesting to see how that changed this year.
Yep.
With the weather. And the course was a little bit different too, but I don't know that the course was as much the significant variable as the weather was. And the majority of people did not finish this year. It changes the game. I mean, people's peanut butter was essentially frozen solid.
Yeah. That was a thing I was going to mention after that. I think people should probably get a 8-ounce package of pecans or something. That if they need to eat it, it's there.
Yeah. Yeah. You mean in replacement of the peanut butter?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, coming out of, so, the first few years, the first year when we rolled out the Ultra for Polar Roll, you've been involved in that rollout, and we've talked a lot about the gear. We've talked about the route, and Arrowhead's been referenced frequently.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And it's been referenced because it is the standard.
Well, let's build one of the 50th toughest ultra marathons in the world.
Yeah.
And I think with this Polar Roll Ultra, I think that's 49.
Well, so where I'm going with it is what Ken created, or what Ken and his team created with the Arrowhead, we've tried to honor and respect that by being somewhat consistent with, gear.
Mm-hmm.
So when we came out, we essentially copied the gear list, and it's part of which is also something that we've never done before, because typically everything we do with our events is we're just going to do what we want to do, what we think is right. So this was a bit of a departure from our normal event rollout, but trying to be respectful, I guess, to Ken and the Arrowhead. And I also felt like, winter ultras are a whole different niche, a whole different type of event. And there seems to be a very specific community around those events that are doing them. So, part of my rationale was this makes sense to me, so that if they're going to do Arrowhead or Polar Roll, or I guess even Tuscobia or others, Iditarod, try to make the requirements as similar as possible.
Yep.
Just for ease of preparation for the participant. But what we've learned in doing it the last few years through gear checks and stuff is that we've had to continuously make adaptations and adjustments to the way we want to do gear check, to the things that we allow people to take to do the event. I mean, it's shocking to me how often when we've done these gear checks, people are just creatively trying to cut corners all the time. And they don't understand that cutting that corner could put themselves in a really dire situation, right?
That's right.
So, I guess back to the peanut butter thing, where I'm going with that is the peanut butter after this year, having people come in, the people who finished with rock solid peanut butter. I look at that and it's like, okay, this is not sensible.
Yeah, because if you need it now.
Yeah, if they had been in trouble, they're screwed.
Yep.
So going forward, I can say we will not allow for that to be part of the calorie requirement. Yeah. It's just, it doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. And if we got to make that decision for people, we will make that decision for people.
Yeah.
Okay, so...
Okay, so I did the Arrowhead.
Yes.
And then in 2019... I pre-rode the point-to-point for you from Copper Harbor to Marquette.
Yes.
And then I did the point-to-point race in July of 19.
Yes, you did.
20, I did the EX 100. 21, I got the Fist. 22, I got the Fist.
Explain what the Fist is in case somebody's listening and they won't know.
Oh, okay. That's you. You do the EX 40, EX 100, EX 225, and the No Fun Run.
Yeah, the 50-mile fun run. So you did all those events between July and September.
Yes.
Was that the year that you went out and did the 225 and had frostbite? Yes. In September?
September 2nd.
September 2nd.
I did all my weather checks on all the weather stations in the area. The EX is going. I did Skaney. I did Big Bay. I did Marquette, Champion, Lance, Michigami. Everybody was saying the low temperature is going to be in the 40s.
And how cold did it get? At
Fort Beer Corner, it was 20 degrees, and I had gotten wet feet.
Sound familiar, Mark?
And I got wet feet just before I summited Wet Arvon, right? So you go in that old railroad grade.
Yeah, is that along the river?
Yeah, it's along the river there. Yeah. And anyways, I got wet feet, and I knew my feet were getting cold, so what do? First line of defense, you got to move forward. I get off and I walk.
Yeah.
And I would make it a point to walk up every hill, get that blood circulating in the toes. And ultimately, I end up, I'll call it frost nip, a little bit of superficial frostbite. So
the weather the forecast was off by 20 degrees.
20 degrees, yeah.
Do you, when Mark and I did Crusher in 23, Nick was out there. And I think we got into the mid-20s, right?
Yeah, it was about, I think, 26.
Yeah, I got down to like 26. But Nick, when we got to Kerwood, he decided to bivvy.
Oh, yeah?
He bivvied because his feet were wet. And he was cold.
Yeah.
And it was getting increasingly cold. We were on, I don't remember when we were on Kerwood. But anyway, thinking about him too in that situation. That was in early August.
Late August, 20.
Oh, yeah, late August.
6th.
So close to the same time that you were out there.
Yep.
And I don't think that it had called for weather in the 20s, but it got super freaking cold. He did end up finishing too, right? Nick did. Yeah, he did.
He did.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the Crusher. That is one thing for the, especially in that EX territory, that I harp on with people who are new to it. You can't trust the forecast. You have to be ready for
You have to be prepared.
You have to be ready for the worst because it is shocking how cold it gets out there in those swamps.
Yeah.
In those low areas.
Yeah, especially like by Fort Beer Corner, you got that Huron River Valley there.
Unbelievable.
Even though you're up at 1,700 feet, elevation, it's still a valley.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Before I want to touch on this before we forget to touch on it or go back. So, Tour Divide in 2016.
Yep.
You're planning to do it again.
Yep. If God will allow me.
And you're planning to do it this year.
In 7 weeks from tomorrow, it'll be rollout.
So almost 9 years later, you're going to do it again.
Yeah.
What's your goal this time? What are you hoping for?
If I do 30 days, I'll be happy. I'm not going to kill it.
First time 32?
32, but the first time, for the first 2 weeks, I was not in race mode until I buddied up with a guy from Silicon Valley, from California. And he kind of, we rode together for a week, and he got me in race mode.
Okay.
Where you get up at 4 a.m. on the trail by 4:30, and you just crank it out.
You're planning to go with somebody, right?
I'm planning to go with my buddy Matt, yeah.
Okay. And it's his first time.
It's his first time, yeah. He wants to do it, and I'm kind of, I'm just going to be, accompanying, I guess.
Okay. So is that why you're going? To do it with him? Or just because you want to do it again?
I want to do it again.
Okay. That's fantastic.
And it happens to be a bonus that I got a partner this time. So
yeah. Wonder how that'll change the experience, or not in a good or a bad way, but when you do something, when you're in it. So do you have an agreement? What if, is there any sort, have you talked through, like, let's say you get 5 days in, 15 days in, and somebody can't go on, or somebody's like, I don't know, I'm out.
Yeah, we've
talked about that at all.
Yeah, we talked about it briefly, and we just got an agreement that we got to be honest with each other. I mean, if it starts going south real quick, then let's speak up and let's maintain our relationship.
Yeah,
and be honest and open, and one of us wants to drop, then the other one can make a decision.
Yeah. So when Mark and I did the first ride around the UP in 2020, it was me, Mark, and Chuck. And we rolled into Iron River. That was the fourth day, right?
Fourth day into Iron River.
So we were 4 days in. It had been a shit show up to that point. It was a tough run to get in Iron River, 400 and some miles in. And just before bed, Chuck looks at us and he says, when we get the Gwyn tomorrow, I'm done. And I just remember we looked at each other. We looked at him, looked at each other. And it was like, you sure? And he's like, yep. And we went to bed.
Yeah.
And we got up in the morning. And we rode out of Iron River together. And then eventually he went off the front. Never saw him again. And he got to Gwyn, and I think he caught a ride. Did he catch a ride from Stacy?
Can't confirm.
It might have been Stacy. Or maybe Stacy saw him and drove by him on the show. I don't remember. But anyway, What I remember is that was an interesting moment because, you know, we'd started that, you're 400 some miles in to this 1,000-mile route, or in your case, over 2,000. People, I think if you're going to go do something really long, really hard with a group of people, you need to have upfront conversations about if shit goes sideways, what are the rules of engagement? Because in the moment, we hadn't talked about it that year. We hadn't discussed, like, what if? But the way we handled it was very clinical. It was just like, okay, he's done.
Yeah.
Let's, we have 600 miles to go. And I think maybe just kind of knew, like, we can't dedicate a bunch of energy into maybe helping him sort it out or talk him out of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That energy has to go toward finishing what you started. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think short of just offering anything that we had with us and, understanding what he was going through, there wasn't anything we could really do about that. And,
right.
That was a good clean cut. But moving into the next tour around the UP, we clearly had some rules of engagement.
Yeah, we said up front for the group the second time when we went to do the whole route, the 1,600 miles, it was just clearly laid out. If at any point you decide you need to quit, don't fucking talk about it. Middle of the day, we don't need the drama.
Yeah.
Everybody's gonna have their hands full just to be able to do this because none of us had ever done 1,600 miles before. This was all new, so it was just kind of vetted out. Like, if you get to a point in the middle of a day and you feel like you're out or you need to quit or you're just basically in, fuck it mode, keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
Try to get your shit together, get to camp that night, maybe sleep on it.
Yep.
And then if you're still in that space where you're like, I'm out, just tell us you're out and we're not talking you out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
'Cause the rest of us got a job to do.
Yeah.
That was the understanding.
Okay, here's my Tour Divide quitting story. Everybody has a quitting story. It was day 8. I had just spent 36 hours previously in a motel because I was coming down with a cold, and I knew that I had to take care of my physical self before I could go on. So I roll out of the motel at 4:45 in the morning. It was 20 degrees out. Tour Divide, you pack minimal. And I'm going down these steep mountain passes here. It's pre-dawn, dark. There's ice on the mud puddles, and I am just freezing. I am freezing my ass off. And I'm going back previous days. I had rode with a guy from Italy. He blew his knee out, so he dropped out. I rode with a guy from Big Rapids, Michigan. He had a mechanical. His rear hub failed, so he dropped out. So I'm freezing my ass off, and I get to where I had one bar on the phone, and I call my wife. I says, I already had this planned out. I was going to go to Helena. I was going to get a plane. I would be home like within 48 hours. Okay? I mean, I was quitting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, the plot.
Yeah, the plot. So anyways, I call my wife there, and it's kind of, broken up. I only have one bar. I said, I'm quitting. I says, it's no fun anymore. She says, you got 2 broken legs? I said, no. She says, warm up and call me in an hour. Okay. So the sun comes up. Weather temperature warms up to about 45 degrees. I got a chance to think about what she said because she encouraged me, hey, this is the greatest adventure of your life and you're going to blow it. I called her up in an hour. I says, thank you. I says, I'm going to finish.
Wife of the year.
Yep.
Wife of the year right there. We should get her in here. We should have brought her in with you.
Yeah.
That's a good story.
That is.
You said something that is the key. What you told your wife, it's not fun anymore.
Yeah.
God, aren't we lucky to live in a world where we can literally just decide we want to do something or not do it because it's fucking fun or not fun. Is that crazy?
Yeah.
I think about you guys in the fucking shaft 50 years ago.
Yep.
Right? Is that fucking fun? Well, I don't know. Maybe for you guys it is.
I tell you what, when you're an 18-year-old kid, you're very moldable.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
And they show you this is what we do. This is the way we do it.
Yeah.
You're going to do it or go home.
Yeah.
Oh.
Which sounds like you just described a 906 Adventure Team event.
Yeah.
But, I mean, think about it. So that is normalized.
Yes.
You come back to this idea of normalization. That's the way things were. That's the way things rolled. You're in or you're out. We don't care.
Yeah.
Right? And you know what? It probably honestly was fun some days.
It was. It was
probably not fun some days, and you still did it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's something that would be wonderful if we could relearn that sometimes it isn't fun, and that's actually the fun part.
Yeah.
You can reflect back on how not fun it was.
That's right. And you can grow from that being not fun.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I remember, I want to mention this because I just thought about it, and I haven't thought about this many times since we did the ride. But do you remember when Tori had to tap out? His knee was bothering him. I don't remember what day it was, if it was 6, 7, 6, 5, 6.
Yeah, 6, 7. Yeah, I lost 3 spokes and within like 1/4 quadrant of his wheel.
Oh, right. So that's right. His wheel started coming apart as we were headed into Waters Meet.
Yeah.
And then I think his dad brought him a wheel, or, he made some adjustment. He had a fat tire on the back.
Yeah.
He put one on the back.
Yep.
So he was back up and running. Anyway, where I'm going with this is when we're talking about having clear rules of engagement, and if you're out, how you're going to communicate that to your crew. It was after Iron Mountain. We'd gone into Wisconsin temporarily. Anyway, we were past Iron Mountain. The group had kind of dispersed. We were broken up. We weren't together. We were spread out. Cell service was super sketchy, not dependable where we were at that moment. And I was alone, and I had a text come on my phone. So I stopped to look at it, and it was Tori telling me he's out.
Uh-huh.
And I'll just never forget sitting there alone on the bike, right? Because then right away I get the text, I read it, I'm like, fuck. And I kind of thought he might be going that way. I thought he'd be able to make it through the end of the day, but yeah, just standing there like getting that text, he was the first person to drop. And just knowing like he's back there somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know where.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to keep going, and he's got to figure it out.
Yep.
If you're going to do something long and hard with somebody, have that shit figured out ahead of time.
Oh, yeah. No doubt about it.
Have a plan for it.
Have a plan where you can part with dignity.
Yes.
And not burn any bridges.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. 100%. So you're going back. Anything else on the second trip? Maybe we should have you back after you do it to hear how it goes.
Well, I'll be, what I did is I journaled every day.
The first time?
The first time. And that's where this book come from. And I posted on Facebook, my daily adventures.
Is it still online?
Yes.
Probably on your Facebook page?
Yeah, on my Facebook page,
Okay.
yeah.
They'd have to go back in the Facebook archive.
Yeah, back in the archives.
The book, is this a one-off?
Yes. Yeah, this is one that my daughter made for me, my oldest daughter.
I see you thinking something.
Yeah, can we see it? What's the name of the book?
Okay. There you go. A Tour Divide, Banff to Antelope Wells, New Mexico, 2016. And that's we were camping. I was with that guy from Silicon Valley. His name was T. We were camping on the Great Basin of Wyoming. And then on the backside is the finish line, Antelope Wells. Mm-hmm. So, and I'll just randomly pick a page, okay? Day 4, 93 miles. I biked from Eureka to Whitefish, Montana. Today was the first day I had dry feet for the entire day. It started out on a sad note when my buddy Matteo from Italy Scratch due to a sore knee. Later that day, I hooked up with Tim Glover from Big Rapids. We rode 90 miles together, arrived in Whitefish 9:30 p.m. Great mountain views and hoot conversation. And then I recorded my data, 93 miles, 12 hours clock, 1044 spin, so you're cranking most of the time.
Yep.
Average 8.8, maximum speed 32 miles an hour, because you are flying ass down those hills. And vertical feet 5,000.
Fast forward. Go forward 20 days. What'd you write 20 days in?
Okay, 20 days in.
Yeah, get in there.
Okay, that was day 4, day 24. Okay.
There you go.
Day 24, 7/3/16, 74 miles. I was on the trail 5 a.m., headed for Del Norte, Colorado. Yeah, I trail camped that night. I climbed over a Canero Pass and traveled through high meadows before arriving in Del Norte. Somehow, at the end of my ride, I bent my rear derailleur. A bike shop in Del Norte was open. That's at 6 p.m. on a Sunday. They were open. Can't believe it. Fantastic. Just a little rain today.
Bike shop of the year.
Yeah, a little bit of luck there. Like
I'll say. Guardian Angel.
5%.
Yeah, 5%. And my clock time was 11 hours. Spin was 10 hours, 6 minutes. Average 7.3 miles an hour, 74 miles, 4,000 feet of vertical. Maximum speed, 34 miles an hour.
Wow. Good stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah. So anyways,
And you get to do it again.
get to do it again, yeah.
I like it. Mm-hmm. So let's talk, tour. You did Crusher after the tour, did Arrowhead.
Did Arrowhead, I did Crusher events.
Yep. What else have you done since the tour? Event-wise.
Event-wise, just basically, I did the Polar Roll in 19. That's when it was the Polar Push.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 17 miles of hike-a-bike.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Yeah. I think that's where I met you.
That's we actually met in 16, but that's where basically we kind of met each other and
Had an interaction.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going around on the snowmobile.
You were doing a sweep.
Sweeping. That's right. And it was over
In South Jackson Pit.
South Jackson Pit. Exactly. Came up on you.
Yep.
Well, you weren't the only one over there either.
And you asked me, says, you going to finish? I says, when's the cutoff? Because at the rate I was going, I was going to finish at 10:30 p.m.
Yeah.
He says, there's no cutoff. I said, I'm finishing.
And you did.
I did, yeah.
Oof, that was that was the worst year at the time. Probably still was the worst year, but this year brought back some memories of it. Mm-hmm. Some PTSD.
Yeah.
Polar Roll PTSD.
That's right.
Well, I know that you've kept yourself really busy outside of events while personally participating in events by volunteering.
Yes.
So talk about that a little bit, because you have been an integral part of recon that we do for Crusher and Polar Roll with the group. Not as much recon for Polar Roll, but grooming.
Yeah.
You've been part of the Suffer crew for years now, several years.
Yes.
Just talk about it, because volunteerism is something that is becoming more rare. Mm-hmm. It's becoming something that is harder to get people to do. And I'm saying it's hard to get people to volunteer for volunteer gigs that are easy. Mm-hmm. The volunteer gigs that we ask people to participate in are not easy. I mean, we have people, and this is not to diminish what a participant in the event accomplishes by finishing our events, because it is extremely significant regardless of what the distance is that you complete. Mm-hmm. But volunteering, I would put at an equal level with difficulty. If you're in the Suffer crew and you're going 24, 36, 48 hours, sometimes longer, on a volunteer gig, no sleep.
Yeah.
That's fucking hard.
Yeah.
I come out of Margie, not so much Crusher, I'm not sure why, but I'll come out of the Margie week or even now Polar Roll Week, because Polar Roll is almost literally a week long, more physically and mentally trashed from just operating the event than if I had done the event. Mm-hmm. So it's significant to me that you're doing this because you're how old now?
69.
So you're 69. You're all in, helping us with these events, doing it. Like, just what's the motivation? Why are you doing it? You don't have to do it.
Okay, just go back to our relationship. We've formally met South Jackson, Mine Pit, Polar Roll 2019. A few months later, I showed up, I think it was sometime in April. I showed up at a Tuesday night bike ride at the Bayous in Harvey.
Oh, yeah, the grind.
Yeah, we used to have those rides. And I remember at the end of the ride, you asked me, it says, because you and I talked about GPS files previously. Mm-hmm. And I remember you asking me, you said, Paul, I got some GPS files for the crusher. Would you look at them? Sure. Okay. I looked at them and I seen some anomalies there. And somehow I got into the conversation about the point-to-point race. And then I wanted to prove that a slower rider can finish.
I remember those conversations.
Yeah, those conversations. They
were lengthy.
They were lengthy, yes. And so I volunteered to do the point-to-point, mm-hmm. And I did it as a, recon. I documented and journaled and took pictures.
Yep.
And then from there, let's go to, I don't know. You started getting me more involved, asking me about GPS and about routes and, what do I think and blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, basically somehow or another, I just kind of got assumed or, drawn in, we'll call it, mm-hmm. or simulated in 21 to do more recon and do pre-rides. And then 21, 22, 23, I've been designing your EX courses.
Why do you keep doing it?
Because it's there.
What do you get from doing it? I got to imagine you get something from it.
Okay. You're a good person. This is a great organization. And if I can, you're retired, you never have a day off. Mm-hmm. But I schedule my days in because I want to help promote cycling and I want to help promote people to push their limits, do hard things, mm-hmm. And I have the ability to share my experiences. And
so you think it's important for people you must see a value for people to learn to do hard things, or that they can do hard things?
They can do hard things. You can get out of the office, quit being that desk jockey, 9 to 5, and get out and do hard things.
So you came from a life of mining, a career of mining. You left mining, retired.
Yeah.
You sort of described getting out of shape.
Yeah, round is a shape. Big round.
Round is a shape. And so it sounds like your daughters, your kids, got you the bike.
Yep.
Right? So it's interesting because if you look at it, they were kind of like giving you something, mm-hmm. Not knowing where you were going to take it.
Giving me a tool.
I'd love to talk to them to see if they ever expected this, mm-hmm. What you've done with it. But so you mentioned somebody, a desk jockey, right? I mean, if you were to give advice, you were a miner, so you're used to working hard. You're used to doing hard shit. It was part of everyday life. And then you retire from it. And then it sounds like you weren't doing hard shit. Mm-hmm. Somebody or some people in your life tried to put, an opportunity back in front of you. I mean, what advice would you give to somebody? Because, I think the hardest part for anybody is actually, maybe first identifying that they're off track or off course. Mm-hmm. And then the next part is doing something about it.
Yeah.
Any advice you could impart? Just
ride. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to go out and kill it. You don't have to go out and compete with, your riding partner. Just ride. And what I did early on is, there's a lot of mining history in the Ishpeming-Nagani area. What I would do is I would plan, I want to go find this mine tomorrow. So I'd pack a lunch, pack water, and I would ride, 9 miles from my house to Nagani, and then I would ride around, Next thing you know, I got 35 miles in, exploring. So give yourself a purpose to get out there, whether it's to go around the neighborhood 6 times or, go to this end of town, that end of town, or like in Marquette. Okay, do the South Trails one day, do the North Trails, make your way up to Ramba, but make a goal or give yourself a purpose to be out there. I'm going to be out there for, I want to see this.
Yeah.
Or, give yourself a destination.
Yeah. So you went into riding with no expectations.
Correct.
That actually sounds familiar to when you talked about taking the job and coming up here, and you said you had no expectations. It seems like if you can go into something with no expectations, you open up the possibilities of what it can become and where it can take you.
That's right.
Because if you go into something with very clear expectations, I think a lot of times that's actually what sets people up for failure. Is it's like I'm gonna get a bike and I'm gonna go do Margie, and I'm gonna finish it, and then they get in and they quit. Well, now their reality and their expectation are not congruent.
Yeah.
Right, and that can be a hard pill to swallow. I can see where if you're just going into it with a bike and you're just gonna go ride, as you said, that as you do that more, just riding, it seems like it just leaves the possibilities of what it can lead to is limitless.
Yes.
Where you can go with it.
And then just fast forward a little bit here, get a bike, build in comfort. Mm-hmm. Just because they sell it at the bike off the shelf, that doesn't mean that's it.
Sure.
You can raise your handlebars. I raise my handlebars so my wrists don't get numb. Yep. I got the old school spring seat. I mean, a little added comfort on the behind, and build in comfort so you're comfortable. So you're not getting 8 miles into the race and you're getting saddle sores. That's going to discourage you right away.
Yeah, I think that people they get too caught up on sometimes the cost of the bike, not realizing that the cost of the bike and then what you're willing to put into it as far as for customizing it to fit you is sort of going to be the difference between enjoying that activity or not.
Yeah.
And we say this actually a lot for parents of children who are in the youth program on adventure teams. It doesn't have to be a great bike. Okay. I'm not saying it has to be an expensive bike, but it has to be a bike that they're going to be comfortable on. Because if they're not comfortable riding the bike on the trail, they're not going to like the activity, and you might actually have an experience where they think that mountain biking sucks. Yeah. But it's actually just that the bike wasn't suited for the activity.
Yeah, whether it's seat, handlebars, even gearing. Your standard off-the-shelf bikes, they have a higher gearing. What I do when I buy a bike, I pre-order it with a smaller front sprocket. I don't need that high-end gear. I'm not putting power to the pedal at 24 miles an hour.
Right.
I want that grandma gear, so get a low gear so you can not get discouraged and you can make a lot more hills.
Yeah. Yeah. Volunteer experience. You got a favorite story?
Oh, favorite story. So many of them. Oh, okay, here. Yeah. A year ago, I was doing a crusher recon up by Mount Arvon. I'm on my dirt bike. And I'm going along this new road, logging road, and my right side peripheral vision, I see what is like metal aluminum from a travel trailer, about 50 feet off the road.
Oh, I know where this is going.
Yeah, and there were no leaves on the tree, so, you could see a couple 100 feet in the woods.
Yep.
And I'm riding by there in peripheral vision. I just take a quick glance at it. I'm thinking, who in the hell would ever trash a travel trailer up here in the middle of nowhere? So I go about 200 feet, and I got to look at that. I turn around. And I go there, park the bike, walk in. I look, it's an airplane. Mm-hmm. It's all crunched up. And I'm, holy shit, what's this, So I start looking around. First thing, not knowing any history of it, I'm looking around. I'm looking for bones, and no bones. And I'm looking for an engine block. And I'm thinking, okay, this has been discovered. Mm-hmm. They already took the bodies, and somebody salvaged the engine. Well, anyways, you run the tail number. It crashed on May 29th, 1974. And all 3 occupants died in the crash. Mm-hmm. So I guess that's an exciting story doing recon.
Yeah, we that was a checkpoint.
Yeah,
and it was interesting because that was a tough one. It's we love with the crusher and the checkpoints. We love to kind of try to tie. Well, I'll say actually with all of our events, we're trying to tie the events to the UP, to the history, to the heritage, highlight different events, places, aspects of what it is to live in the UP. I mean, that's a lot of, that's a lot about what Made Up is about. Podcast, life up here, people who live here, why we live here, what we do, etc. But that was a tough one for some people because I know Fred and Beth had a tough time with that one because they're licensed pilots.
Yeah.
And, that hit.
That hit home.
That hit home. That hit home big time. But I didn't know anything about the crash. So it's just, I always think it's important to learn about the history of the place that you inhabit. Yeah. And I've been kind of surprised through the years doing these events at the different stories that we've uncovered or learned about that we didn't know anything about. I mean, look at Margie Gessick. Mm-hmm. And that, directly tied to mining in the history of, the discovery of ore in the U.S. I was shocked. I've said this before, but I was shocked when we started digging into, because it was just like, okay, we're going to do a 100-mile mountain bike race. It's going to be all uphill. It's going to be hard as hell. Mm-hmm. Well, what the hell are we going to call it? Yeah. So I just started Googling iron ore history, Ishpeming. Mm-hmm. And Margie's name kept coming up. So started learning about the history. And it was shocking to me. Nobody knew the story. Yeah. This is in 2015.
Yeah, kind of like forgotten history.
But yeah, and it's forgotten. Sometimes you wonder as we normalize making things easy, trying to tie it together. You go from being ankle deep in the water in the dark, eating sandwiches with bugs on them, everything by hand, to state of the art, no touch ore. Yeah. You wonder if it isn't just a liability or a loss of resilience and toughness, but you also forget where you came from, the stories of the people who actually got you to state of the art. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like the sacrifices and the hard life that they had to endure so that we can be here and almost take it all for fucking granted. Yeah. Which is so fucking crazy to me.
That's right.
I remember as I started digging in and asking a lot of questions here locally about Margie, this and that, and that era when ore was discovered, and people would be like, "Oh yeah, there's a statue of him out on Main Street in Ishpeming because there's a old-ish statue." Well, that was disproved that that actually was not Margie, and there were multiple versions of that statue apparently around the UP in various towns,
and also in the East Coast, Pennsylvania, they have one or two.
Yeah, it's. But the people who told me that was Margie, they were absolutely certain that it was.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's just wild. So yeah, the history of the area. I mean, going back to the plane crash, it was. Yeah, that's super unfortunate, but it's also good to know what the hell went on here before we were here, and maybe it helps you be a little bit more appreciative.
Yeah, like the history up by Mount Arvon. Also, you have the rock cut.
Yeah.
There's a remarkable story about that rock cut, about that old railroad being.
We just talked about it at that event in Lansing. Yeah. One of the guy that was talking with the other guy who hasn't done the crusher, he brought up the rock cut, and he was like, that was the highlight of his ride. Yeah. going in there, standing within that rock cut, looking up with having the rock, and the sheer cliff on both sides of them.
Yeah.
The story there is that they built the damn thing, right? And then learned later that the trains couldn't get up the grade.
Yes, the grades are too steep, the corners are too sharp. The initial run of the locomotive going around the corner, and maybe the ground wasn't compacted enough or something, and it fell over, and that was it. It never made a complete run.
That is unbelievable.
And urban legend is that the director, the general manager of that railroad, he towards the end, it's supposed to take 9 months to build it. It's stretched it out 5 years. Urban legend is that the director, general manager of that railroad disappeared.
Seriously?
Yeah, with some money.
With some money. That's convenient.
Yeah, so that do some research on it. But Fred C. Reedholm did a nice write up on Superior Heartland about it.
Interesting. I'll have to look at that. Isn't there another book on it? Or is that maybe
there's a local author from Negaunee.
Okay.
I believe Robert Dobson. He wrote a book, The Railroad That Never Ran, and so
that's the one I'm thinking about.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Not nice small paperback.
Yeah. When are you? Do you get any plans to do Crusher again?
We'll see how the Tour Divide turns out. Okay,
that's fair.
And if it does, then we'll.
That's fair.
I'm gonna knock it off one at a time.
So if we just looked at a mock of a route for this year.
Yeah.
You know that the route the last couple of years has been relatively the same. We've changed things up a little bit. Well, last year was a fairly significant change in what mile marker they went into Lawrence.
Yeah.
If you were going to go do that course, let's say the one we're looking at for this year, how long do you think it would take you?
It would probably take me 36 hours. That's
So you'd be an under cutoff.
Yeah, I'd make the cutoff.
Yeah, because I think the cutoff 40.
40. Yeah.
So,
and out of that, I'll have 33 hours of wheel spin and 3 hours of rest.
Downtime.
Yeah.
You're factoring what as an average moving speed?
About 7.5. Okay. No, that'd be my average overall.
Average overall.
Yeah, your moving time plus your downtime.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise, moving speed would probably be closer to 8.
Talk through the mock that you sent me, because I just saw the screenshot.
Yeah.
I haven't seen the file. I haven't looked at the file yet.
Yeah.
What's the sequence of landmarks?
Sequence of landmarks. Okay, you start off in Humboldt. You head northeasterly. You would have the Dead River Crossing.
Yeah.
And then we get on the County Road 510. You could have that Artesian Well.
Sure.
On your left. AAA to the Northwest Trail. You could have Walter the snowplow.
Mm-hmm.
After,
Are you planning to hit Arvon on that front end or on the back end?
It'll be on the front end.
Okay, so it'll be
it'll be Afton's Broadtree.
Yeah.
Mouth of the Huron.
Okay.
Airplane crash site.
Okay.
Mount Arvon.
And
then you make it to Lance.
Is the Huron in there?
Yeah, Mouth of the Huron. Yeah, it'd be.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then Lance is like 110?
Well, around 110, 111. Then Herman. Then it'd be Mount Kerwood.
Okay.
Trail of No Return.
Now, Herman, we're looking at, it looked like the file takes them down, or are you going down to Nestoria?
No.
Okay.
No, we're leaving Alberta and Nestoria out.
Okay, so that is still out. Okay.
Yeah.
So Herman,
Mount Kerwood, Trail of No Return.
Also called Trail of Tears by some people.
Yeah, and Rock Cut.
Okay.
And then you head easterly on basically on the AAA road. You go down State Trail 5 southerly back towards Wolf Lake, and that's where I put a lot of miles on the back end, the end of it, so you can have Lance at 110.
Right. So let's touch on that for anybody who's Crusher curious and listening to this. we've talked a lot about where Lance falls into the route. And last year, Lance was like 130, 140, somewhere in that area again. And it hadn't been that far into the route since 2020, I think.
Yeah.
So if anybody's looking at doing the EX225 this year, that is a significant change that we're aware of and intentionally made.
Yep.
Because there's only one town in the route. You have one hope for resupply.
Yes.
And that's it. Lance is it. And what we have found is if it's at 110, 115, the majority of people who sign up, they can get to Lance before everything closes.
Yes. Campione's, I believe, is open till 11. That's that gas station, and they got the Subway right there.
Yep.
And Burger King's like a quarter mile off road.
Yeah, just down the road. So Lance will be at 110-ish again this year. And that seems to be the sweet spot where people can get there, get resupplied, get their shit together before they head into the night.
Yeah. Or if you want to bail, you can bail there.
Or if you want to bail.
You have cell service. And
yes. Yeah. Once you leave Lance, then you're into it.
Yes.
Then you're into the worst, the brunt of it.
You're committed then. You're committed for the additional 130 miles.
Is that assuming a sun up start and a relative
I'd say 7-ish.
Just for the people that
7 a.m.-ish start. That seems to be a common, or 6 a.m.
Yeah, when I've done it, I roll out at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Early bird gets the worm.
Yeah, you definitely get there in time. But that's an important one to note. If you're starting 6, 7 in the morning, you can likely get the Lance before everything's shut down. And what we've seen is for people who don't get to Lance before everything closes and they don't have the chance for resupply, that's where they quit.
Yep.
At a very high rate. Last year was probably 95% of people quit.
Well, it's a convenient place to quit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, well, the elevation gain from that point forward is significant.
Yeah, it's the one. So with Arvon being on the front end in the first 110, I'm not saying that it's not still hard, but it's a little different because the iteration we did, it was you leave Lance, you get out to Herman, and then you've got Kerwood, you've got Arvon.
Trail of no return. Rock cut.
And the rock cut. I mean, even leaving the rock cut, that was a nice little pull up that hill.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like that. Well, at least Arvon, Kerwood, and Trail of No Return is just like a trifecta of fucking pain. Yeah. I remember when he and I were going up Trail of No Return together, and he stopped at one point, and it's pitch black. And he looks at me, and he's like, remind me, what the fuck is the point of this? Because you're just pushing your bike straight up in the dark. Yeah. It's like, what the fuck? Yeah. It's not a trail.
Okay, it was on a 1956 geotopical map.
Was it really?
It was on there. So that's how I found it. Going through iCarval maps of the area.
So I think it's important to point out that we can blame Paul for.
Oh, absolutely. It's Paul Hytinen's Trail of No Return. The sign clearly says.
Thank you. Okay, I found a trail, but my buddy Matt Sturmer, when we initially rode it the first time, October of 2021, halfway up, and he named it. He says, this is the Trail of No Return. So Matt gets kudos for naming it.
Here's the question I wondered about. So the first time that I saw a picture of the sign with you standing next to it, right? There was a skull hanging up.
Yeah, we found a deer skull there.
And so you didn't harm any animals?
No.
All right. I've been wondering about that.
DX225 this year, we're looking around 18 to 19,000 feet.
Do you think that's
vertical?
Do you think that's real?
It's close.
Yeah.
It's close.
Wasn't it like 15 when we did it? 16, 15?
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And 22, it was, I think I had 14,000 and some change on my vertical on the GPS. So now just due to the way I arranged the schedule, and put a little more climbing, we're plus 18,000.
That's good. That's good. How's our time right now? I know that you've got space issues on that card.
We're good.
We're good? Okay.
We're good.
Good.
Call it 40. More.
Okay, good. Any other previews on the routes that we want to talk about crusher-wise? I saw the 100 is like 124.
The 124, yeah, I got about 8,500 feet of climbing.
That's stout for hundreds.
Yeah.
For the 100, yeah. Mm-hmm. What was last year's 100?
It was, I think, 126 miles.
Okay, so same.
And but I made a few adaptions there, starting at Eagle. I changed things up a little bit, and I want to discuss with you. I know I'm deer in the headlights, but we have the Four Beer 40, we have the Eagle 40. Mm-hmm. I was thinking about the Anderson Corner 40.
I mean, nothing is ruled out.
Yeah, because that could possibly expand a little bit more territory to the west. Possibly include the rock cut into that there, or even Mount Curwood.
Well, I think that anything that we can do with a starting point that opens up access to, putting new things into the routes for people who aren't doing the 100 or the 225. Because I mean, if you do the 225, you're gonna get to see everything, but not everybody's gonna do the 225. So that's why we've tried to add multiple 40-mile options, and then kind of change up, like, basically have multiple 40-mile options that are of increasing difficulty and featuring different landmarks, right?
Yeah.
To change it up. What we should have done, and I didn't think of this. Well, I did think of this, and then I forgot when we opened Reg. But we could add it because we haven't even started it yet. There should be like a trifecta of the short routes. Like if you're able to do, if we have three, if you do all three of the 40s, something. Yeah. Something like, I don't know if it's a mini fist or a middle finger.
There you go. Yeah. Some memorable swag,
something
that has character.
Yeah. If you did last year we had 3 40s.
Yes.
So, in theory, if you did all 3 in the summer in the 90-day window, I mean, 40, you're probably going to end up logging 150 to 180 miles, in all honesty.
Yeah, this year I think the Eagle 40 is, I think it might be 71 miles. Yeah, I used that. I used my patented route stretcher on that one.
Roy Kranz and his fucking wheel sensor are going to be pissed.
Yeah.
What about the gnarly one was the beers?
Yeah, the 4 beers. That's cute. That's a nice one.
So what are we doing on that one? Is there any change to it?
A little subtle change. I think we're changing direction on that one.
Okay. But still the same terrible stuff.
Similar terrible stuff, yeah.
What about the quarter-mile hike-a-bike we talked about? Is that at play?
I got to get up there and do some recon, yes. That'll be between Arvon and the airplane crash site. That's what I've been thinking about.
Okay. But this is a little teaser.
A little bushwhacking.
This is a little teaser that there could be a bonus bushwhack.
Bonus bushwhack, yes.
Mm-hmm. And what routes would we have that in?
Would probably be on the possibly the 225.
Excellent.
And we could probably squeeze it into either the 100 or the Eagle 40.
Oh, perfect. We should definitely get it in the 225, the 100, and at least one of the 40s.
Yeah, I just got to see how nasty potential water crossings are. Well,
the nastier the better.
Well, I'll know in about 3 weeks. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. That's good. Crusher, you compared Tour Divide to would you say 20 or 22 crushers?
To 22 and a half EX 100s.
Yeah, put that into perspective, hey?
Yeah. Yeah, so start doing the EX on your starting day and just crank it out and for 22 and a half laps.
Yeah, to me, it is actually kind of fascinating that once you get into that flow of doing that day on day, if you can get your head there, your body will follow.
Oh, yeah.
It's just built. It's built to do it.
Yeah.
You know.
But also, don't kill yourself. Listen to your body when you ride.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. People start getting problems, and okay, I got a little creak in my knee or something, and they push through. No, you got to listen to your body.
Yeah.
Don't push it so hard.
Yeah. No, I agree. Be smart.
Yeah.
If you've got something going on in a knee or in your back or in your Achilles, whatever it might be, don't keep pushing through.
Yep.
Address it.
Or don't try and keep up with a faster rider. You're going to burn out.
Yeah.
You're not going to have fun, and you're increasing your chances of tapping out.
That's a common issue when people start grouping up. And, if you're going to go do something super hard, super long, and you're going to do it with a group of people, or even just one person, you really have that relationship has to be dialed in, and the expectations have to be clear, and the rules of engagement need to be clearly stated.
Yes, and the faster riders, they either got to suck it up and say, okay, let's slow it down, or otherwise you make an agreement, okay, we're parting.
Yes. I think there's some sucking up that has to happen sometimes, some ego minimization for faster riders if you're going to ride with somebody that's slower, and it's the same for a slower rider. I think that I see a lot of slower riders, and I don't even want to say slower, just I see a lot of riders who maybe go out to do an event with somebody else where they're just not well matched from a pace perspective.
You're right.
And the wheels come off for that rider who can't keep the pace because they get 16 stories going in their head, and they lose the plot, and they lose track of what's in front of them, and it's just fucking getting it done.
Yeah.
So that really, you got to have your house in order.
Yeah.
Before you head out.
Well, when I lead on Wednesday night Ramba rides, and if we have a group of 20 people. We'll go like a slower ride and maybe a faster ride. And I'll take either group, whichever one. And I always look at the slowest rider right away. We go a couple 100 feet and I'll start looking at the slowest rider and I'll say, okay, Paul, you got to slow it down a little bit, or we're good, or we can speed it up a little bit. So that's a quality of what I say a good leader is. You got to, watch your group. But, pay attention to the slower rider to encourage them and have them be part of the ride, not us always waiting for that person or two people.
Oh, for sure. You basically just describe bike club.
Yeah.
That's with the youth program. That's I think the big thing that sets how we approach it apart from other, let's say, race teams is that you are going to base because the kids are grouped by age, not by proficiency and skill. So you by default, you're going to end up with these groups of kids who are 7 with a wide range of skills. And they're going to consider, the leaders should be considering their ride plan for that night based on your most entry-level rider.
Right.
And I don't know. I think that there's a lot of really good positive things that we see come from that frankly, I think the world could use more of, where it isn't, constantly, basically shelling off the back end, instead having the group focus on, we are a group, we will stick together. Yeah. No man, no woman left behind.
Well, when I started biking at age 51, I was that back guy.
Yeah.
I didn't have I knew how to stay upright on a bike.
Yep.
But, I was always the slowest rider. People are always waiting for me. And, in fact, I was so out of shape that I had asbestos exposure in the 70s in the mining game. Mm-hmm. And I was concerned about mesothelioma. And when I first started biking, there's these hills that people would go up, and I'm dragging.
Yeah.
I'm sucking air.
Sure.
I thought I had mesothelioma. Call my doc. Hey, Jeremy, I need a B reader X-ray. He said, Paul, he says, your lungs are good. You're just not in shape.
True, right?
Yeah.
That's just reality. We've seen it in bike club with some kids that their fitness isn't where it could be or should be. So you get them out in the woods and you get them on the hills, and they're sucking air, and now all of a sudden we're talking about asthma. Well, is it actually asthma?
Yeah.
Or are you just out of shape?
Just out of shape.
And when they start having that experience of it's scary for them, because if they aren't accustomed to being kind of put into that pain cave and pressed to where it's hard to get air, it kind of compounds upon itself. But I actually think that, for a lot of youth that we see, that it isn't as much a matter of needing a inhaler as it is they just need more physical activity.
Yep, they got to improve their cardiovascular system.
They absolutely do.
Through exercise.
Yeah, it's 100% what has to happen. Yeah, it's interesting because I think most people, going back to what you said about you were that person, that couldn't keep up, you're off the back. I think most people start there in something in life. And what happens is, unfortunately, that a lot of people, they'll forget about that. They'll forget about where they started. They forget about where they came from. And that's how a lot of people end up, getting left behind.
Yeah.
Just having more awareness of, or a sense of accountability to the group, I think, can make a big difference. We've seen it that exists within the 906 events. I think where we've set that ethos of, we don't care if you're the first one at the finish line winning, or if you're the last person in 25 hours later or whatever, 30 hours later. Both of those finishes deserve recognition.
Yeah.
It just came up actually, talking back to that talk in Lansing, that it's those people sometimes who will stay out there for 25 hours, knowing they're going to get to a finish line, which is a handful of people, no notoriety, no publicity, no awards. There's something in that person to stick it out and finish what they started that is, in some ways, I won't even say more impressive, but equally impressive to the man or the woman who can hammer that same route out in 10 hours and win it.
Yeah.
There's something to be learned from both ends of those events. When you did unsupported Arrowhead, how long did it take you?
24 and a half hours. But
that seems like a good time.
Yeah, well, it was optimum conditions that year. The coldest temperature was -4. Warmest temperature was too warm at about 24 degrees.
Okay.
So
soft?
No, it was okay. The first 90 miles was good. At about mile 92, you start going up and down hills. And there was like 5 inches of fresh snow on the ground. So then it got soft. So, and that soft snow only lasts for about 20 miles. And then it got firm again. So it was, for me, being a weather-dependent event, the conditions were exceptional overall.
What's the cutoff on it?
60 hours. So actually, because there's 3 events there. There's the bikers, there's the skiers, and there's the foot. They call it kick sleds. Yep. Or toboggan.
So it's 60 hours for all disciplines?
For all disciplines, yeah.
Okay.
So in theory, it could they got a warm up cabin at about the 72-mile mark at Elephant Lake. That's also a checkpoint. And you could go in there, have some hot chili if you want, if you're a supported racer. And so you can get warmth. You could take a 6-8 hour nap if you want, but I didn't. I just pushed through. Because at the time, I had $5,000 into that race. And I wanted some swag.
5,000.
5,000.
Well, all the gear you had.
With the bike, the sleeping bag. There was like 6-7 nights lodging. I went up there a few days earlier just to make sure, I had my proper gear. I built in days on Saturday and Sunday that if I failed gear check on Saturday, I could run to Duluth, pick stuff up or wherever. So I had $5,000 into that. So I wanted to come away with swag. So that's why I went unsupported. And I would have carried my bike. there was 2 feet of snow, I would have carried my bike to the finish line to get that swag.
You weren't going home without the swag.
I wasn't going home without the swag. I would have needed 3 broken legs for that one.
That's the Arrowhead, right? The unsupported. Yes. I don't know if it's
International Falls, Minnesota to the casino.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say something about your volunteer ism because I want to recognize it, and I'm recognizing you on behalf of everybody who volunteers for us, because coming into the nonprofit world was a new thing for me when I went down the path with 906 10, 11 years ago. And what I've seen in this world is that there's a lot of time and energy put into talking about money in the nonprofit world, meaning it seems like everybody always needs more money. And you can never get enough of it to do whatever you're going to do, whether it's a youth organization or a trail organization, hospice, whatever it is. It's always money. And I think that there's not enough time spent talking about the people like you who are behind the scenes doing what we do with deep passion, grit, intensity, humility, and service for people. Mm-hmm. And just the fact that, like, for 906 Adventure Team or any other nonprofit entity, without people like you, Mark, before he started working for us, we wouldn't exist. And I think that's super significant because I think too many organizations get hung up on money and they discount the value of the people. And, we are a representation as an organization of the people.
No.
I'm the guy maybe on the front that's the face of the org because I started it, but I am like less than 1% of what it is. It's people I really firmly believe, and I want to say it because I want people to know, like, I think of you, I think of, Dave Kate, and that's a whole different conversation. We won't get into the Kateism. We should actually get him on here sometime.
Yeah.
I know I've said no to that, but actually we should subject the world to Dave Kate at some point on the way.
Yes.
But I think about, right now we're looking at our volunteer numbers for the youth teams in the Midwest. There's 15 of them. We've got 500 volunteers we're training to work with kids to make sure that we don't, as an organization, lose our sense of adventure and connection to the world around us. Mm-hmm. There's no sum of money that can replace that. And I've often said, and I know that there's some people in the nonprofit world that when they hear me say this, their eyes, they raise an eye, and I'm like, we are proof of this. Not every volunteer is a good volunteer. There's a lot of volunteers that come into something to serve an organization, and they're not there for what they can give the organization. They're there for what they can take from it. Mm-hmm. And I know that people like you and people like the 500 people that are signed up to work with kids, Dave Kate, and a lot of the other people, they're not here for what they can take.
That's right.
They're here for what they can give. Mm-hmm. And I'd take that over money any fucking day.
Well, when I volunteer, like I say, God put me here. He met us up in 2019. We merged. I got absorbed.
Yeah.
And I get that feel-good feeling.
Yeah.
Like you call me on a Wednesday afternoon. Paul, what are you doing tomorrow night at Thursday at 6 p.m.? I said, I'm probably going to be grooming trail with you. And ultimately, I get that feel-good feeling inside, because I know my efforts are appreciated, and this organization has treated me good. And I walk away every day with that feel-good feeling, even though it's 10 below zero. We're grooming at 6 a.m. It's all good stuff.
Well, and I can't tell you from my perspective how good it feels to know when I make that call on a Tuesday night, asking what you're doing Wednesday morning, I never take it for granted that you're going to say, looks like I'm grooming with you. Never take it for granted. But I also know I can make that call, and that is likely going to be your answer.
Yeah.
And, I'll add Julie Cunningham in here too, who does a tremendous amount for us. Mark can attest to that.
Absolutely.
She is working a full-time job. She lives in Midland, Michigan. She doesn't even live in Marquette County, and she is as dedicated to what we do as anybody. She's as dedicated to what we do as I am, right? And she doesn't get paid a fucking dime. It's that kind of commitment and passion that really defines a fucking organization.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah, as far as compensation, you doubled my bonus this year.
I did. It was incredible.
Yeah, 2 times not is not.
2 times nothing is nothing. I'll give that bonus. Yeah, we'll approve that bonus every time.
Yes.
But anyway, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your ass here or anybody else's, but I think that volunteers, they deserve to be recognized. And at the same time, and I really actually feel this within our organization with you and Julie, they deserve the recognition. They deserve to hear from me how much what they do matters and how much it would impact us if we didn't have them. And then at the same time, when you hear that, I know that you don't need that.
No.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think that that's the beauty to what we have here is this, it's just this selfless sense of service, which I am incredibly appreciative to be surrounded by every day. So
thank you very much. And I'm going to ask for a doubling of my doubled bonus, okay?
Well, Mark, I approve that. I think for today, that's a good place to wrap this thing up. I do want to say we should, after you're done with the tour, we should bring you back on and talk about it.
Yeah.
That'd be a really good, I think it'd be cool to feature the tour here. We've got a relationship with Matt and Scott because we use their beacons from track leaders.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that the track leaders, is running the event, but I'm just saying there's a connection to the people who are connected to that event. They have supported us.
Yep.
We use their equipment. So, yeah, anything we could do to give some recognition and exposure to that and maybe open up more people to feel like they can step up and try to give it a shot, right?
Hey, well, if you got 5 weeks of your life you don't know what to do with, okay, the grand departure is the 2nd Friday of June from Banff.
Yep.
Or you can go Antelope Wells on that same day and go do northbound.
Go the other way.
Or otherwise, if your time doesn't permit, you can do an ITT, individual time trial.
EX.
And you can do it at the time frame of your liking.
Yeah.
But don't go too late because you can get stuck in the monsoons in New Mexico. You get that peanut butter mud. Absolutely no fun.
Well, let's get you back on here after you're done.
Great.
After you finish.
Cool.
All right.
Well, it's been a pleasure to share my stories in global headquarters here.
It's been very good.
Yes.
All right. Let's rock.
Thank you, Todd.
You're welcome.